Hey, it's Tarrmu, and welcome to Thinking Out Loud, and in today's video we'll be talking about the Switch 2 and more importantly, what I feel is the biggest issue with the console. My gripes stem from the practice that is becoming more commonplace since the console's release, and that is the inclusion of game keycards, which are physical copies of a game that comes with part of the game on the cartridge but also requires a download for you to install the rest of the game to your Switch 2. Where this becomes an issue for me is that it's removing physical media from games, which is an ever-growing issue in this industry, and Nintendo with the first Switch was one of the last safe havens really for physical releases of video games. But here with the Switch 2, this type of philosophy is changing. But it isn't just the effect that it has on physical games enthusiasts like myself. Even if you take a step back and assess game keycards from a practical sense, it is in almost every way the downsides of both physical media and digital, with physical media taking up physical storage space and the worst elements of digital, meaning that it requires an internet connection to download the rest of the game, to install it, and not actually owning the game. The only flip side that the game keycard posits over purely digital purchases is that you are able to lend these games or sell them if you no longer want the game. Now, there is a rationale behind this. The intention behind the game keycard is that, as Nintendo states, it will allow for bigger games from publishers, third party in particular, to come to the Switch platform. It's a way for these third party studios not to suffer the constraints of the Switch's cartridge sizes, meaning that the Switch can have games that go up to 64 gig that can run on the cartridge and then have the rest download locally. This is why this initiative and this idea was made in the first place. The thing is, and the thing that makes these matters worse here is the reasoning behind this, because what largely it comes down to is saving costs from these publishers who get their games on these cartridges. Because Nintendo can offer cartridges that come in a variety of different storage capacities, starting at 1 gig, doubling all the way up to 64 gig. In most cases, the publishers are opting for the cheaper cartridge to save on costs, and then they in turn offload the rest of the game that would remain as a download. I find it hard to believe that many of these games that have been released on the Switch 2 could not have fitted on a cartridge, especially when you look at games like Cyberpunk with its Phantom Liberty DLC all being available on the cartridge day one. I mean, it just feels like there's something amiss here, and I guess there is a cause for concern, because whilst you have internet now and you have the services available to download these games with your Switch 2, I just think in the long term, what is the play here, and will we be able to access these games that we download and download the rest of them? And it also posits an issue that if you have no internet connection, or if you're in a country with very slow internet speeds, it makes purchasing these games and getting the game fully downloaded onto your console a much longer task than it would otherwise need to be, just slotting in the cartridge and just playing the game. If there is one instance where I can understand or look past this, it is for indie developers who are on a strict budget and are wanting to get their games on shelves for people to visibly see and for exposure. That case makes sense to me, but in most cases the game keycard feels like it's a cop-out or an excuse for making ports and the Switch 2 versions less of a hassle and cheaper, at the expense of the ownership that the player has over the game. Thankfully, first-party games, as of the time of this video's release, are still completely on the cart. But I can't help but feel that this precedent that has been set with the game keycard, that even Nintendo, as we move further into the future, will be moving away from physical ownership as well. Like a bastion, a publisher who's always been at the forefront of letting you own physical media is now even stepping away from it. It's problematic because one of these days these servers will go down, and I wonder how will this keycard ownership and downloads operate in the future, and what will owners be stuck with? Is it essentially half a game? Because if you don't have internet or access or means to get this, that's kind of the case. More broadly, it poses a dire landscape for video game ownership in the world of games more broadly, where we move away from physically owning a product and more into an environment where we will own less and continue to pay more. There is still time for Nintendo to correct course on this approach to distributing third-party games, and man, I do hope that we see this sooner rather than later. And if the recent polls are to go by, many are not happy with this new practice. But what are your thoughts on this whole game card feature, and what do you think the solution is here? Because I feel personally, outside of this one feature, I really do think the Switch 2 and everything that it has done so far has been a pretty great console. Despite what many may have criticisms of, I think it has done a great job improving and iterating on the Switch 1. I mean, it's not a monumental leap from the console like the Switch was to the Wii U, but I do think it is a good console. But this game keycard thing, it really is that one big thorn in its side that I'm just like, I don't know, man. But yeah, let me know what you think about that down below, what you think about the Switch so far more broadly. And as always, I'm Tarrmu, and this has been Thinking Out Loud. Thanks for watching.